Forged Men, welcome to week 5. We have Nick with us again. Nick, welcome. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, sir?
Doing very fine. Thank you, my friend. And Mark, as always, good afternoon, sir.
Same to you. I'm doing great. Let's go.
Let's go. Let's go. So week 5, I'm gonna tie in the comfort trap. Why growth requires discomfort. Initial thoughts.
Hey, for me, I even started out today uncomfortable. I woke up this morning and I'm an early riser. So I've already been up 7.5, 8 hours. And I just didn't want to do today. I didn't have no energy. I'm doing some stuff for my health and to get a little bit better, and that may be part of it. But I, had it not been for Jason and us having some things scheduled, I probably would just said, today's not the day. I'm not going to do it. But once I got past that uncomfortable, I'm like, let's go now. So the hard part taking that stepping off of that porch or whatever you want to call it to get in the middle of something. And all of your growth in life is going to come from being uncomfortable. And my friend Nick knows a lot about being uncomfortable. So,
He
Nick, what do
does.
you got to
And let me jump in real quick, and then I'll Nick turn it to you. So I'll with Mark, that's where brothers, we don't realize the impact we play in each other's lives. And Nick, Mark, and I were just talking about this before we started recording and started the podcast. Humility is powerful. We've talked before about the people that you coach that come back to you later in life that say, "Man, you made such an impact in my life," and all you were doing was just being there for them, supporting them, giving them what they needed. You saw something in somebody, some talent, and all you did was like clear the path, give them the path, give them the map, help them out, and it was really nothing. It was human nature. But humility and helping people along the path is strong. And Mark said to me this morning, and all we're there is for each other. Just that brotherhood, that the what Forged Men preaches, you don't realize the impact you have in somebody's life. So when we say reach out to a brother, reach out to a friend, you don't realize what that impact will be because all I was doing was chat with Mark and the impact there. So just want to say that. But Nick, please over to you. What thoughts do you have on growth and discomfort, my friend?
I've got a lot. Uh,
do?
We've got an hour.
I could use all day if you wanted to, but we got a White Sox game a little later tonight. So I'll get it done before then, I promise. I'm sure there's a lot of people in my life still that would probably say that I have some room for growth. But, certainly about a decade ago, I couldn't have agreed with all of them more. Uh, you know, this morning I woke up, and part of growth and humility and becoming yourself, and one of the greatest things that I've ever done in my life is starting a company that God gave me to steward. And what comes with giving you that responsibility is a lot of waking up and calling people like Mark Phillips, who's a general manager when I met him of a Honda store, and they look down at that phone and they see my number in the morning and they know exactly what I want to talk about, and they know exactly why, because we are at the last conversation, the contract is ready, everything is ready to go, and Mark is looking at his phone and I'm sitting there, and these are the things that you don't like to do as the CEO or the president of the company. You don't like to disturb people's privacy. You don't like to disturb people's time. But when you're called to do something, it is your job. It is your job to, whether you're comfortable with it at that moment or not, you need to man up and have the conversation. And, when I took on the responsibility of God's gift to me of this company, I knew that it was going to come with really hard conversations and really hard sacrifices. And God gave me a partner in this transition in my life. And I couldn't be more grateful for her. She is a professional at keeping me uncomfortable. And, but, that's something I'm extremely grateful for. I have a support system now. It makes discomfort a lot easier when you put yourself around people that are willing to help you in your times of discomfort. And I appreciate you gentlemen out there for taking your time to watch this and share this with us, because you're helping me as much as I'm helping you.
You know
That's
my answer to
a start.
I do.
that.
And what would that answer be, Mark?
No, we're getting more out of you and you're getting out of us.
Of course, of course.
But
So
that's what it's for. We need to talk to each other. We need to get those out. We have to realize as men, we want to be that island, right? We want to be King Kong. We can handle it. We don't need no help. But nobody succeeds without help. And taking charge, like Nick says, of something that God put in his path and ask him to do. Um, you have to have courage and you have to be uncomfortable to step out and do that. And to realize when people are in your life, God's putting people in your path that are going to help you, and sometimes teach you what not to do, you know. Um,
you're right. You're right. And Nick, I don't know if you watched my individual posting earlier, but I referenced Frank Thomas as far as swinging
Big
for the
hurt.
fences, the big hurt. So I was a big baseball fan back in the day. You mentioned the White Sox, so I'm going to mention that. So I don't know if you watched that, but the reference, I mentioned Frank Thomas in my earlier video, which was kind of interesting. So
I think that's really wonderful. Frank Thomas is my favorite athlete of all time.
it was amazing. The
So
big hurt. Yeah.
I grew up in California, right? And when I was born, my father made sure, to the point that my mom told this story a lot, that I was a Bears fan. I had a Bears football, I had a Bears blanket, and the intent was for me to be a Cubs fan. And we had WGN back in California. So I would turn on the TV and I would see the Cubs in the afternoon right after school. And I'd be like, this is great, up until they lost 11-1. And it was always in the afternoon because they didn't have lights. And then at night, this big guy with the number 35, he'd come on TV with all of his friends, and they were doing all this wild stuff and on the south side. And I didn't even know what the south side of Chicago was, but I loved Frank Thomas. And I've been a White Sox fan ever since.
They left the ivy and the blue unis with Sammy Sosa back at Wrigley Field, and yeah, went over to the white jerseys and the other side of Chicago. Yeah,
Yeah, you referenced the home runs, and one of the things that I decided at a young age, and I think it's a blessed life when you get to grow up around the innovation that I got to grow up. I'm very grateful for my mom and dad, and they were always having people over that to have conversations around the dinner table, because they didn't want to partner with people that they didn't know around the dinner table. And it was really cool to be a kid and pick up on all of that. And I would meet these people, and they would come in some of the time with their wives, and they'd talk about this great idea that they're having and how it would apply to these businesses and income development. And I realized then and there, from a young age, that if you're going to mess up in life, make it big. Mess up big. To use an NFL analogy, Brett Favre didn't mind throwing interceptions. He didn't mind throwing interceptions in his personal life. I'm not going to go there today. The point is that, it's cool. When you shoot for the stars, you're going to learn a lot of lessons during that time. And you may not succeed every single time, but like God says, you fail 7 times and you righteous get up every single time, and he will make you prosper. I'm a living testimony to that. So,
amen.
and that's something that we can't forget. One thing as men is, I was just talking to a buddy the other day, and a lot of my friends want girlfriends, and and I totally get that. But and what's really impressive about my Christian walk with God is my surroundings now don't want one night stands. They don't want to meet somebody for 6 months and get rid of them. They want a lifelong partner. And when God is preparing us to take on another responsibility, whether it be professionally, a new chapter in life, or maybe a new person in life, if you're doing it God's way, he's not going to give that to you until you're ready in God's eyes. So, we talk about praying for patience. Well, God might give you a couple of cold calls from Nick Alderson to start preaching you patience. He might give you a door or a roof salesman coming to your door every once in a while. But these are the things that God puts in front of us in order to build us as men, to get us to the next chapter of life. So I encourage those that are going through trials or a wilderness season where God might be being silent. That's where he does his greatest work. So
Absolutely.
You're 100%. It's the journey of the destination, and the previous. I'm reminded of a few words that ring true: the go big or go home, the discomfort, the forging the path, but on the preparation, the wilderness journey, if you will, all very important, because growth is there. We don't always see the signs. We don't always know why we're on the path that we're on. We don't know it at the time, Usually in hindsight, though, you can see what the path was there. But if you just trust that you're being led on the right path and forge that path, walk that path, own that path, and learn from it, it'll be surprising where you get. So,
1000%.
so with what we're talking about the big game and the Frank Thomas, the swinging for the fences, and all that kind of stuff, why do you think for a lot of men comfort is seductive? What's the appeal of living a comfortable life?
I, that's kind of the way our brains designed, 2000 years ago, uh, even 200 years ago, even at the founding of our country. I mean, we were farmers, and I mean, there were a few professions, but we handled things on our own, and our brains built that way. And it takes 1,000 years for our brain to refocus. So our brain's trying to protect us from stuff. Now, it was designed and was originally protecting us from a bear or something, that a lion, or you know that the raging waters of the river after a big rain, and it was telling you to stay away. But it still does the same thing today when you're looking for that girlfriend, to not do it on the phone, but to go somewhere, a church or a gathering, or through another friend to meet that person, that introduction. It's uncomfortable because you don't know how the outcome is. Going to interview, I know guys that do great job. They're phenomenal at their job, but they hyperventilate at the idea of going for an interview because they get into that uncomfortable area. How's this going to turn out? Who cares how it turns out? You either win or you learn, right? I know it's cheesy, it's clichéic, but it's true. Either win or you learn. If you don't get that job, I don't care what job there's very few jobs. There's one president job. If you're trying to be president, that's win or lose. But if you're trying to manage a grocery store, be a finance manager at a car dealership, I mean, there's thousands of those positions and you only need one of them. So I think we're wired to be afraid of something that might hurt us, even though it can't hurt you. Most of it can't hurt you.
Well said, Nick.
You know, this reminds me of a time when I was much younger. I'm 40 years old now, although I look like I'm 12. The thing is when I was 18 years old, for nonviolent reasons, I got out of jail. And before that happened, my mom was at the grocery store and she was shopping for groceries. And somebody from my past, parent who grew up with me, said, "Your son's a loser. He's in jail." And my mom was like, "Yep." So she was a psychologist. She was very smart, and she didn't really argue the person's point was the point. But I got out of jail, and I was offered an opportunity shortly after to leave college and do some F&I or finance specialist work at a tent sale in Colorado for somebody who was in desperate need of a finance manager. And, I had an opportunity to leave my life and go out there and take this opportunity to work in the blazing hot sun and do something that I knew how to do. And long story short, 2 years later, I had enough money to sit down with my dad and go, I don't know what to do with my money. And my dad said, "Let's go buy a home." So that same parent that approached my mom at the grocery store 2 years before that approached my mom at the grocery store again and said, "Your son's a stud." And my mom called me that day, and it was really, really cool. What happened was, unfortunately, about 7, 8 years later, the job that helped save my life turned out to not be a job that I should have anymore. It was not benefiting me in any way, except I had a home. I lived in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, and I was 25 years old. I wasn't far from a bar that I didn't need to drive to. It was a nice situation for anybody who's in that situation and living in the world at the time. But that's exactly what held me back. The thought of losing the home and having to take steps backwards in my mind and having to lose all of that in order to pursue something different, it scared me to my core. And what I've learned is that in those times in life, you're not supposed to go to God and go, "God, I like my big screen TV on Sundays with my neighbors. I like my comfortable job where I can show up hungover and do whatever it is that I want pretty much and still have a job. And it's not growing me in any area of my life. But I'm going to trust you with everything else because, that finance thing, I don't trust you with, God, although it says that you're my provider over 100 times in the Bible. But, I shouldn't listen to that. So, that's where I got comfortable. I got comfortable living in the world and in the idea that the people from high school no longer thought that I was a loser. And that kept me from my growth and my opportunities in life to maybe take some things and take some risks and take some chances. Because what I learned by working for my family for 28 years, and I consider myself a co-founder because my mom and dad were rock stars and somebody had to get them to work. So um, I really, really loved that portion of my life. At the same time, I had to let it go. I had to let go of that identity in order to grow. And by the time it was all over and dad had sold the companies, I looked around at a lot of powerful automotive dealers and a lot of powerful income development company owners who looked at me and went, you would be best served to go prove that you could work for just about any income development company in the world and then start your own thing because you've only worked for your parents so far.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And so I would have learned that lesson much earlier if I had followed God's guidance. But appearing as the perfect American family and perfect institution of work was way too important to me. And what I found out was from Mark Phillips right here. That not everybody likes you. and,
Wow.
Wait, what?
some of the time, half the room doesn't. And that's okay. So, God loves you.
That's right. It is okay if everybody don't like you.
It is, and you have to accept that because that's generally the case, and that's Nick. That's a wonderful like piece of history and how it led to your path, and it really is the next kind of topic on our piece that growth lives outside the comfort zone. So you lived in your comfort zone with the image of yourself and where you were and your comfort level being 25 years old, and I may or may have not walked in that same office with the same uh, foggy head a time or two. So I know that well. But growth lives outside the comfort zone. So you push yourself outside that comfort zone. So just like working out, you're not going to build muscle unless you push yourself. You have to tear muscle to build muscle up. So growth lives outside the comfort zone. Mark, thoughts on that?
You're right. I mean, we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. We need to be uncomfortable most of the time. I mean, and then that's not just our business life. Our business life, definitely, you got to get uncomfortable to grow. I've worked with both of you in the auto industry, and one of the most frustrating things for people I worked with was I was mad when we hit our goals. Because I mean, if you hit your goal to sell 500 cars and you sell 503, I'm gonna be mad because now the goal should have been 600, right? And that was uncomfortable for the people I was chose to surround myself with.
Yes, it was.
Um, but you do need to be uncomfortable. Same thing in our personal lives, our faith walk, our walk with our families. You mentioned you got to tear a muscle to build a muscle, by going to the gym. So I think that's how God designed men. He designed men and women differently, and we're supposed to go through life with different objectives and different challenges. And I think we need to, it's hard. You got to force yourself to do it. You got to be conscious of it. You got to be saying, hey, this is an easy day for me. I gotta stir it up. I got to go after something else. Um, when I started selling cars in 2003, when you sold one, you're like, I just killed the day. I'm done, man. And then the first
Go
thing,
home, put your feet up.
Dennis, who taught me a lot of good and bad about the car business, the best time to sell cars is just after you sold one. Well, that's not what you want to do, right? You want to go celebrate. You want to walk around a little strutty and I'm the man, and you want to look in the mirror and say, you're King Kong, and that's not what you need to do. So men, I advise you just get as uncomfortable as you can all the time. I mean, you need some time with the family and you need some time within that. But even when you're sitting watching TV with the family or out back cooking hamburgers or whatever, as a man, I think you're always still on some kind of guard, right? My wife and I and our grandson a couple weeks ago went to the grocery store. I tend to embarrass my family out in public, but we're putting the groceries up, and she's put him in the car seat, and she says, let me help you with the groceries. I said, no, I want you to get in the car, because she had already started the car. So I'm worried somebody's going to get in the car and drive off with their grandson in it. I said, so you get in the driver's seat. I had to tell her a couple of times. She finally got the point. But I think as men, we're always on guard. Uh, and I think that's the way we're designed.
And it's that role as protector. And that's that always being, and we live in a crazy world because, 20 years ago, did things like that happen? Somebody jump in and steal a car? Sure. Was it very infrequent? Absolutely. Is it almost too common now to hear stories like that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
You hear
We're not
about.
shooting enough people.
I'm glad I was talking over you during that, but don't disagree. So, with my last marriage with our daughter, and our daughter is 10 now, just celebrated her 10th birthday. But when she was younger, my wife would get out and pump gas, and child would stay in the car seat. I'm like, lock the doors. Well, why? Because if somebody takes my kid or my wife, it's not going to be a good result for anybody because they're
Right.
taken. It's just going to be a bad situation. So we are the protectors, the disciplinarians, the forgers, if you will. So yeah, we always are on guard. And to that point of like growth, living outside the comfort zone, hard conversations create strong friendships. Does a true friend say, yes, everything's good? Or does a true friend really have a conversation with you? Nick?
I learned that the hard way. When you
Yeah.
surround yourself with yes people, they'll uh, they'll lead you right back to what you're trying to get out of. But it's your decision. It is ultimately your responsibility not to do that. However, you know, one of my biggest passions in the world is prison ministry, and one of the best friends I've ever had is Ben Leonard, and he's my icon when it comes to prison ministry because you'd think this guy's going to Disneyland before he goes to prison. And he's an engineer and he's very, very smart. And there's just some people that have this uncanny ability to get uncomfortable and not only love being uncomfortable, but dig it. And those type of people are ones that God blesses you in your life to learn from. And I think that something that's important is I have a saying to people that come up to me and are struggling before they get in and to a treatment center and after they're in a treatment center. And it's my life has always been better. And when it is, there's one consistent thing other than God that's at pretty much the center of it. And that is boxing. I love boxing. And our body is a vessel. I've tattooed mine, but God gave us this thing as a temple to serve Him, and that's not a joke. And my way of going and getting uncomfortable is either boxing, just in general, or getting myself inside of the ring with my opponent inside of my head when I am at boxing, and this allows me to work through different things, especially in my head, and it makes me more effective at work. It makes me more effective in my praising of God, and it makes me more effective in my friendships. And when it comes to things like the gyms, addictions, overworking yourself, not being in positive environments, maybe not having enough animals in your life, we need friends to be there for us to that I always say I had the advantage of growing up around some pretty powerful people. And at one point, these powerful people decided that they were going to put nothing but everybody that told them yes in front of them. And I've seen what that does because not only have I personally experienced it, but I have watched it hundreds of times and observed it from the outside. It's a dangerous place to be. And
Amen.
It feels good in the moment, but I agree.
yeah, it does. And that's the world that we live in right now is feeling good in the moment. What I looked at one time in my life at about 30 years old and decided to get really uncomfortable was how long could I be uncomfortable for? Can you be uncomfortable for 10 years? Can you be uncomfortable for 5 years to get to your ultimate goal? But God's going to ask you to do that. We have so many examples of David and Joseph in the Bible and Radshak, Meshach, and Abednego being thrown into the fire. We as forged men are going to get thrown into fires because we asked for it, because we were chosen. And before we ever even came here, God talked to us about our mission, in my mind. And he explained what we were going to do. So anytime that you're overly frustrated with being uncomfortable, just remind yourself that you've had this conversation with the creator of the universe. So get back to work.
Yep.
Amen.
They need to be uncomfortable for as long as it takes.
Amen.
Sometimes we have that idea of that path or that time frame in our mind, but the work might not be done yet. So you need to be uncomfortable for as long as it takes. Good point.
Amen.
Good point. Discipline over feelings. Feelings are temporary, right? Temporary feelings are euphoria, joy, pain, struggle. Discipline over that. So, I'd turn it to you guys. I kind of act as a moderator, even though it wasn't intended. My thoughts on this, discipline over pain. Mark said, let's do a podcast. I said, yeah, right. I'm not going to record myself talking about something. And Mark and I haven't done this yet, but we've talked about going back and looking at the week one podcast, which is out there. But I've not done the compare and contrasting. I'm kind of a person that I'll do it, but I won't go back and look at myself. Now, I will do that and kind of catch myself saying quite a bit. But the discipline over the feeling, so the feeling of insecurity, the feeling of inadequacy, the feeling of self-doubt, which I think are present in all of us to some degree, are overcome by the discipline of, okay, 11:30 Wednesday, we're doing the podcast. So that discipline creates a discipline in of itself of researching the topics. What are things to talk about? Let's make it coherent. Let's make the weeks tie together, creating a framework. And it's created discipline in my life, I think in our lives, to get past the feelings of whatever self-doubt there is, to know that we can do this. It's nothing but a thing. And that's why we say we're not ivory tower guys. We're not polished. We're not editing these videos at this point. It's just guys talking about guy stuff. But it's created discipline and a level of comfort and discipline to get there. So discipline creates discipline, which helps with the feelings of inadequacy. Gentlemen?
Yeah, absolutely. Feelings are emotions, right? And the bad part is they're very powerful. They're very suggestive. They move us in a direction, whereas the discipline, if we will have it, will create even more powerful feelings, because then the feelings will be not that I didn't want to do it, or not, it'll be that I did it and I accomplished it. So I think we can create our own euphoria just by, I mean, Jason and I recorded something earlier this morning for one of our businesses, and I didn't want to do it, but man, when we were done, I was jacked up and ready to go. So sometimes just ignoring that feeling, especially when you get to the position where you can ignore it, you can say, I'm just not going to do that today. I'm not going to the gym. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to eat that deep dish pizza instead of, that high protein and some good veggies that I need for my system, or take those vitamins. It's the discipline's the hardest part of those two, but it's also the most rewarding.
It really is. And Mark and I were high-fiving virtually after that, because it's how can you come and have conversation like this, engage in brotherhood, have those conversations, and then be left feeling, down. It's like, I said to Mark, it's like, when my dad, when I was younger, when you get angry when somebody does something to you, count to 10. I was like, but Dad, if I could count to 10, I wouldn't be angry anymore. And he's like, well, that's the point. But it's forcing yourself, creating that discipline to count to 10, and then you're not going to react poorly. So the same discipline on this is, Mark and Jason hold each other accountable from that brotherhood standpoint to do these podcasts and whatever the other sources are. And then because of that, it changes that feeling. So again, discipline and feelings, they really, the discipline does help you create the positive feelings. It's not that yes man, as Nick said, it's not that yes man feeling. It's that true feeling of self-accomplishment, self-worth, self-value. Whereas Mark says he has those days a couple days a year. He said that earlier. I wish mine of the not wanting to do anything were a couple days a year. I strive to get to that point, and I will get to that point through my discipline and dedication. For now, it is more than a couple times a year. But with that brotherhood and with the camaraderie and just the interaction, the dialogue, that gets me out of that funk and helps me. So the discipline creates the positive, true, genuine, good feelings, not those yes man feelings.
Amen.
Nick, did you want to add anything to that one, sir?
I I I was just thinking that God has a sense of humor when it comes to this. Uh, I quit drinking over 6 years ago, about to be 7 years. And a month and a half after I quit drinking, God sent me to work for Mark Phillips at McGrath Honda Elgin. And that was quite the experience, because you go from being on a bender essentially to having to manage people and be serious and figure out a job you haven't done in over a decade. That will get you real uncomfortable real quick. And also, it will make you very confident in that God certainly has a plan for you, because there were a lot of profound moments and a lot of profound relationships that I developed during that time. And, oddly enough, the only reason why I even got the opportunity is because a headache for 20 years of my dad in a competing company of his in the income development space for automotive dealers got uncomfortable themselves and allowed me to do finance in one of their stores. So, I learned a lot about being uncomfortable, both personally and professionally, in that experience. But that was also the first time that I had decided to go through my problems and go through these things with Jesus Christ at the center of everything. And in that, it made every single day better, because I had had training grounds with automotive F&I that nobody wants to go through unless you want to work for an Italian guy in Colorado for 80 hours a week, not knowing which store you're going to and going to do an F&I when somebody who's 40 years old making six figures a year just got fired, and you're 19 years old, hungover, walking in and taking their job. Let me know how it goes. That was my life. So being uncomfortable at McGrath, and then also I learned at McGrath that I could go home and have a bottle of Macallan 12, but every day is going to be something new. Every day is going to present you with another reason to go back into your old habits. And for God, really at the center of my life, allowed me to believe that so much that I didn't drink. And, I sit here now 7 years later without a sip of alcohol, and it's not easy. I've told people it was easy at other times when I've had long terms of not drinking. It is not. So for those of you out there and it's your first day, God bless you. And I'm praying for you every night.
Well, congratulations on your journey as well. And as I said, last week was the first time you and I met. So any stories that you're sharing here, unless they were shared last week, are the first time I'm hearing them as well. So congratulations on your journey. I know that that's a tough, tough path. And that, the AA path. Did you go AA route, or did you do it yourself, or what support system?
Yeah, Jesus Christ is my support system, and I would recommend Alcoholics Anonymous, of faith-based Alcoholics Anonymous, to anybody in the world. What I learned through Alcoholics Anonymous is that I had been through Alcoholics Anonymous with 18 months sober before, but never had passed the first rule of Alcoholics Anonymous, was admitting that we are powerless and, letting God take over. And I wanted to take over myself. I wanted to remain in control. And one night in 2017, when I got here to Chicago in a snowstorm in October from California in the baggage claim, I looked up, and in front of people too, out loud, I just looked up and I said, "You got me here. You're in charge now." And some person was like, "I've been there before, man." And I just knew it, because nobody even looked at me weird. It was like, great, God's got me here.
Well,
So
and to put there, but the AA reference I was there is yes, you have to admit you're powerless and give yourself over, but it's also that accountability, and it's that buddy or sponsor system.
yeah,
It's we've talked about the cohort, the group, the camaraderie, the brotherhood. So the brotherhood is there to help you hold yourself accountable. At first, it's accountability. So you would come to me, or I would come to you in that situation. Hey man, I'm having a hard time or whatever. And again, we didn't, but that's how the system works. Is you'd go to your sponsor, and the sponsor would talk you off that ledge, or calm you down. But all they're doing is teaching that self-control. And again, that's at Forge Men what we do. It's that brotherhood to be there to support you, to be that sounding board, that system of support, comfort, solace, whatever the case may be. But really, it's to teach you to be your own. Because I mean, do you still have a sponsor in your life? Are you still connected with your sponsor?
I don't have a sponsor in my life.
Yeah.
I do prison ministry, and I've allowed that to. So my sponsor would be Steve Madawick.
And that's your sponsor, but you've taught yourself the self-discipline to get to almost 7 years. So you needed that support system up front You admitted yourself powerless. And again, I'm tying it back to Forge Men, of course, but again, a very, very important path and journey that you walked down, but you needed that support and that accountability up front to teach yourself that own accountability to make it to 7 years. And again, great success. Congratulations again on that path and continued what you're 40, so 60, 70 years in the future for you, my friend.
Yeah, well, God bless the Alcoholics Anonymous program. I've watched it save several of my friends. I'm not hard into that community. I have about 20 close confidants that are. I've watched it save impossible situations. My church has taken over my life. So that seems to work well with my AA friends as well. So God program, it's a great way to sober yourself up.
Yeah, and then of course with Al-Anon, and that's all different down that path. But there's a lot of supports, but support systems. But it's not going to the program. It's not saying, "Hi, my name is Jason. I'm an alcoholic." Whatever. It's not that. It's believing it. It's walking the path. It's truly forging the path. Anybody can recite a script, say it. Anybody can say, "Yes, I need help. Where's my brotherhood? Where's my cohort?" But it's really turning yourself over to it, opening yourself up to that brotherhood, to that constructive criticism, to the uncomfortable growth, to the discipline. It's truly opening yourself up, whether it be spiritual, intrinsic, whatever the case may be, hopefully a combination of all, just letting yourself truly be open to an idea and knowing that you need to transition your life, whether it's going to be work, relationship, whatever the case may be. It's letting yourself be open to that change as opposed to just going through those steps. The steps get nobody anywhere. You have to
Yeah.
truly believe it and be open to it. So all very impactful stuff, really right in line with what Forge Men is about. So again, thank you for sharing your journey as well. Mark, any
Yes,
thoughts,
sir.
my friend?
I went first. I'm in the first row, amen in here. So
Amen.
I'm in
So,
we used to call it the amen pew when I was younger.
and we've kind of and I knew that this week in particular with our pre-conversation would kind of take care of it. So the last bullet point was really brotherhood during difficult situations, which I think we've already talked to. So, at this point, just open forum. Any thoughts as far as recapping, anything we haven't talked about, anything that we did talk about that was so relevant, it's worth circling back to. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I think we got to train ourselves to be. You talked about that last point that you think we already covered. It's realizing when you're in sometimes when you're in the crap, you don't realize you're in the crap, right? I mean, you sleep to get away from it. Some people drink, some people do other. There's 1,000 things vices we can use to kind of escape something. We need to self-reflect enough to realize, hey, I need AA. I need to call Jason. I need to call Nick and tell them what I'm going through. They've probably been through it. There's a man or somebody in your life that can help you back on the spiritual path, back on the physical path, back on, any path that you need, but you have to slow down enough to do some self-reflection and realize where you are, you know.
I like that. Nick, any final thoughts from you, sir?
If your life is uncomfortable, God doesn't allow anything that he doesn't allow. So God's always told me that there's nothing that you can't tell me, Nick, that I can't handle. I'm God. And if you don't have anybody, you have God. And I can testify to that. And when God tells you that he's going to give you twice as many friends and a better life, he means it.
Amen.
You're sitting in a situation where people are calling you crazy and people are calling you insane and the whole world's against you and you have a belief in your heart and people are calling that crazy and you know that this belief keeps you up at night and you know that you're not going to be able to live your life until you chase that belief, God has likely put that belief in you and God will make a way. God doesn't care about your finances. He doesn't care about your parents' finances, and he doesn't care about how he's going to get you money and how he's going to support it. If it's for you, you'll know because the dream will be supported in ways that you can't even fathom or imagine.
Amen.
Sitting around, I listened to Joe Rogan one day, and he talked about changing your life and getting out and changing your life. When I left my place 10 years ago, I had lower than a 400 credit score. I had no money and I had no hope. And I have now worked for 5 different income development companies. I have now worked for dealerships and jobs that I probably shouldn't have had. Thank you, Mark. God bless you. And you know what? I have been put in rooms that you could not imagine getting into, let alone for free. And I've done it. And it's because of God. And when you put your life in God's hands, he's going to make it uncomfortable. So it's a good sign if you are uncomfortable. And I would just really, really stress to people, pray. It's your ultimate superpower, and it will lead you to friends that are like you. And what I can't stress enough is in the last year of my life, I've had to take a look at my life and some of my Facebook connections and some of my friend connections and even some of my LinkedIn connections and go, I'm not doing this anymore. And because some people will keep a vision of you and they will never let it go. And in Christ, you are a new creation, and all of that stuff doesn't exist. So if people aren't going to let them go, then you need to learn how to let them go. And that will make you uncomfortable, but you are what you hang out with. I get the opportunity to talk to prisoners and more in what I feel is very important is prisoners that are transitioning back into society. And I go over with them all the time. Nobody likes you anyway right now. nobody Nobody wants you near them right now. So get used to the uncomfortability because God has a special purpose on your life. There's a reason that you are talking to me, and he's going to lead you to other people. But what you surround yourself with is what you will become. And we just had this wonderful Netflix documentary about the crash. And one of the parents that adopted one of these kids that died in this car crash said, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And he was referring to his son who was partying until 5 o'clock in the morning with these people and died in the back seat of that car. I should have been that person in the back seat of the car. I should have died a couple of different times, and God's kept me alive, and it's for a special purpose. And if it's for nothing more than to marry Christina Basilev, I know that it's for a very special purpose. So, thank you for having me on this podcast. I really love what the Forged Men is doing, and this is just a special thing that we got going here, man.
Nick, Mark and I know appreciate that, and I'm sure audiences as well. We had some comments about you last week, so thank you. Your insight and perspective are invaluable. Obviously, we had some deeper, more serious conversation this week, which is important. It has to be. Again, we're all guys hanging out, camaraderie. We love the laughs, but again, it's being uncomfortable, having those serious conversations, and learning from them. So again, it's taking a look at your friend Rolodex, and it is weeding out some friends that were good friends for a long time. I too should have been the guy in the back seat of the car, in the side of a tree, whatever. I've lived more than my years of life, have more than my share of experiences. Some of them shouldn't be talked about, but it's realizing that path is going to get you nowhere, and turning around and making more of an impact in your life. So the serious conversations are very, very important. Again, the brotherhood, those difficult conversations, all in line with what we've said. So again, your insight and perspective is invaluable. So thank you for sharing your personal story and your journey. I know you do that. It's not easy for everybody, but I hope it helps somebody.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Mark, appreciate your time and insights as well. Gentlemen, I guess we'll conclude for this week. So those of you watching, thank you very much. Again, we'll put some resources there. Again, June is Men's Health Month. So the thing that I'll leave you with is, we say, and we kind of referenced it earlier, I think from all three on the panel here is, you might not know to reach out or be comfortable to reach out. But if you see somebody that might be struggling, that isn't themselves, that just isn't acting normal, that you think is drinking more heavily or perhaps turning to substance and alienating things in their life that they've enjoyed, and you notice that. You didn't notice it for no reason. You noticed it for a reason. Maybe God put that vision in your head. You noticed it for a reason. Reach out to them. Ask them if they're okay. Making it meaningful. Tell them they have a boogie hanging from their nose. Reach out and be that friend. Be that person. Be that brother. Reach out to a friend if they need it. Again, June is Men's Health Month. We need it. It's important. We'll put the resources, and we're here for you as well. We've had some people reach out in situations, whether it be legal, whatever. We've had some comments, Mark, on different channels, and we're responding to all of those. Some we can provide advice for, some we can refer out. But if you have nobody else, reach out to us. But if you see somebody struggling, please reach out. Be that brother. Have that uncomfortable conversation, and you'll know if they're welcome to it or not. So, guys, thanks very much. Appreciate your time and look forward to some more conversation next week.
God bless you guys. Have a wonderful week.
To us as well. Thank you.